What happens at the moment is you've got money over here and you've got your rest of your life over here. And that's just not how our world exists.
Vivi Friedgut is CEO and founder of Blackbullion, a fintech business that helps students sort out their finances.
I think that we need to review what a 21st century education system looks like. So if you want to get more nurses, which we know that we need, and if you want more good quality teachers, which we know that we need, scrap the student fees for them because it's actually a tokenistic thing because they're never paying it back anyway.
My family always said you just got to work harder than everyone else.
And then you can change things, right?
I just meant you were just sucked on the teat of Damien, mate. Get me going pretty well.
Check, please.
You started as a wealth manager, is that right?
I did.
Yeah. So how important do you think financial education is in someone's success outcomes?
I mean, in terms of their success outcomes, it's one of many factors, but it's a huge data point in terms of your ability to take control of your financial life. It means that you can take better control of your life in general. Whether we like it or not, everything boils down to money. Managing your money and budgeting and being able to spend exactly what you earn every single month is great, but actually having some leftover and then what do you do with that leftover? That's the difference between being financially secure and not being financially secure. It's that differential, and that's what we are trying to get young people to think about. So our objective as a business is to get people to learn and to start. So one of the pieces of advice I give all students is open a savings account and put in £1. Like, that's it. Put in £2 a month. Right? Cut out 1 cup of coffee. Like, I know it's a big joke, but students, if you go onto campus, people are lining up outside Costa, right? Don't drink 1 coffee and put that money into a savings account. Not because that £2 is going to make a difference. It isn't. If you're lucky and you do it from the beginning, you'll graduate with 300 quid, right? Not that that's nothing, but but it's getting into that habit. It's thinking about what money can do. It's thinking about how money grows. It's thinking about interest. That stuff turns academic learning into practical, real money. And that's where the difference is. You just got to do.
You say students and young people, and we've had a lot of guests on here, obviously, and they talk about your money habits are formed like under the age of 7 or by the age of 7. What age do you think firstly, what age do you deal with students? And when do you think is a good time to start your financial literacy?
So I think you should start as soon as you can start walking. Like, I'm very lucky when money was spoken about around the dinner table, so it wasn't creepy, it wasn't icky, which is where a lot of people land with money. I use students and young people kind of interchangeably, which maybe I shouldn't do because it gets confusing, but not all young people are students and not all students are young people. So, the demographics in the UK of students has dramatically shifted. We have a lot of postgraduate students and we've got a lot of full-time undergraduate students who are parents and in their 40s and 50s. So it's very difficult to kind of be really specific today. My general concept is it's never too late to learn, but it's also never too early. So just start. So we had conversations around the dinner table about, electricity. Did your parents say to you, it doesn't grow on trees, money doesn't grow on trees, and turn off the electricity and all of that?
If I left the light on downstairs, my dad would come into my room at like 2 a.m,
right?
Wake me up and be like, go to the kitchen downstairs in your pajamas and turn off the light. And I'm like, you just came from there. He's like, well, electricity isn't free. So even if I'm out with my friends, he called me back, you left the light on, come back home. And I'm just like, so I learned pretty quickly that electricity is not free. Right. I'm trying to tell my partner and my kid that as well, but she just loves leaving all the lights on.
Yeah, because it's dark otherwise. But what my parents used to do is put the bill on the table and be like, this is what it costs us. So because I'm blessed with having 2 brothers and the 3 of us were involved in family financial conversations. So we'd go to the supermarket every once in a while and my parents would give us a shopping list and they'd give us whatever, $50 note, right? I grew up in Australia. They'd give us a $50 note and go, whatever's left over you can keep. And what it does in the supermarket is it makes you think, oh, do I need the Heinz ketchup or can I go for the home brand stuff? So it just gets your brain thinking. And of course, to have, $2 after is very exciting because you can buy some sweets. But we were like under 10 doing that. So it's just about starting to get those conversations going and removing the fear factor from money. People have this like approach avoidance with money. Everybody wants it, but nobody really fully knows how to use it until they spend some time doing it. We are not born with this skill. We're just not. So the sooner you start, the better. And there's little things you can do. Don't have to start with pensions. In fact, don't start with pensions. It's a terrible idea.
But how do adults who are not good with money themselves have those conversations with their kids?
And that's where the trick is, right? So one of my ambitions with my company, with Blackbullion, is that we become redundant, which, by the way, you don't hear a lot of businesses saying. But in my wildest dreams, I would love for the next, 2 generations of students, young people at university, to gain the skills that they need to then be able to pass them on. Because my mum's mum was not financially literate. So my mother had to become financially literate. And as a consequence, I now teach it. So in 2 generations, you've shifted the finances of a family. So how can we get, adults, let's call them adults. I'll be, specific about the categories. Adults who've got kids, get them involved in some of these ideas. You can learn, you can read, there's YouTube, there's so many places now. There's no dearth of information. There really isn't. Some of it's not particularly engaging.
That's a problem.
But there's no dearth of information. So how do you, we were talking influencers before, right? Who do you listen to? Where do you go? Where do you start? Budget. Make sure you've got a little bit of money left over. Keep your debt low. Start saving. When you've got enough savings, start investing. That's the entire journey of money. It's not any more complicated than that.
But there's so much information, it does get complicated. Like, yeah, especially if you're a student. When I was a student twice, you just get hit with like credit cards through the door. They're like, oh, do you want to get your credit card? I was like, sure, free money, why not? And that was a bad mistake because I went on holiday and spent it all.
Of course.
And then you get like, oh, invest in this, invest in that. And you're like a student who might not have a good financial understanding. And instead of opening a savings account or doing an ISA, the first thing you do is, oh, I'll buy these stocks or I'll buy this crypto or I'll do this because an influencer or a company has reached out to you and you're like, that makes sense, why not? And then, so yeah, it's kind of hard to know where to start by going online.
100%. And one of the things, again, we're constantly trying to encourage people is A, read the small print, B, assume that if it's too good to be true, it is. And I'm forever saying to students, if I drove up a Porsche outside and it looked perfect and I was like, you can have this for 50 quid. You'd know something was wrong, right? Because it doesn't pass the smell test. You'd know. Well, you'd like to think you'd know.
I'd probably still take it, to be fair. For 50 quid, I'd probably still take it.
But you'd know.
Where is this Porsche? That's what I was thinking.
Where's this Porsche?
Just outside the door. But you'd know. Your smell test would be like, something's dodgy. But if somebody says, oh, buy this crypto and it'll go up 1,000% in a week, somehow people don't equate that with, well, hang on a second, something doesn't feel right. So that smell test gets developed over time. And that's why learning about finances when you're a kid, at the dinner table, at school, at university, is such a great time. Early things have huge impact later in your life, right? So a plane that is off, I'm going to get this wrong and somebody will no doubt fact check me, but if a plane is off by 1 degree, then after 16 miles, you're 1 mile off course, right? If you start at the beginning, because the distance starts to do that. Why can't we do that positively? Why can't we shift people's trajectory early in a positive direction? So start saving early, start putting away a little bit of money, start reading about investments, start reading some books. There's so much knowledge out there, like grab some of it. Why learn everything yourself? You
mentioned that you hope the business becomes obsolete. Do you feel then that you provide a service that should be provided by, say, the state or by the education system?
So it won't surprise you, given our conversation before we started, that I'm not that confident in the state's ability to do any of this kind of stuff. Part of the challenge that we have, again, is that there is a dearth of information. The problem isn't a lack of information. The problem is a lack of engaging and practical and actionable information. Government tends to not be great at this stuff. So the reason I hope that we can become redundant is because this is one of those skills that people should simply learn. Teachers are incredibly overwhelmed at school. Are we really going to ask teachers who are already like doing so much work in hours, out of hours, additional subjects to also get confident about money enough to teach like young people about it? I'm just not convinced. I would prefer that it was taught by parents and guardians at home. That for me is the ideal because it's the best way to do it. It's super early foundations. It's a way that you can have some of the later conversations in a better way. But I'm also, unfortunately, not optimistic that we will be redundant. We've been telling people not to smoke for 50 years.
Yeah. If it's not the government, it's parents, but the parents they don't know themselves, so they can't. So you rely on commercial entities.
Correct.
What about the incentives there, though? Should companies that teach people about money be making money from that? Because then they're going to probably push people towards outcomes that suit them. Absolutely.
Depending on what those outcomes are. So we're a commercial organization. We charge money for what we do. Part of the reason that we do that, and I've got enormous respect for charities. I worked in the charity sector, not-for-profit sector for 2 years. Money has to come from somewhere. If you want good quality material and good quality people, you have to pay them money. If you're not charging for your service, it means you're waiting for donations or you need to get some sort of, grants and the rest. Some of that will come from government. But when I started the business, a very, very large payday lender who has since disappeared from kind of the face of the financial services sector, offered me a lot of money to advertise to students. If we weren't a commercial organization, that would be very tempting, because how else do you pay your staff? So I don't think that there's a problem in commercial organizations charging. What I would urge all people to do under all conditions with all things is figure out if that company, how does that company do well? Where's the alignment? So the only way we can do well is if we're helping students become smarter about their money, because universities pay us to support their students. So if all of those students were then taking out payday loans and using loan sharks and going to crypto and getting constantly in debt, university wouldn't pay for our services. So our objectives and our finances are completely aligned, which is why we just got our B Corp certification, right? If we screwed people over, our business model simply doesn't work.
Yeah.
But that's not everyone. That's not everyone.
No, it's not. It's more uncommon, especially within my space. You find that a lot of the content is paid for by platforms, that, like brokers or something.
Yeah.
I make the decision to not be sponsored by brokers, and it costs 7 figures.
Yeah, no, totally.
But
totally.
But what that means is that I can sit here and be impartial.
Yeah.
But this is why I asked you the question, because I think a lot of the time people can consume information and think it's in their best interest, whereas actually the incentives or the motivations of the company saying it are very different.
I totally agree. And I think that leaves a challenge for people like you and me. Why can't we, while we are doing our job and hopefully generating revenue and creating great businesses, why can't we lean into a different way of creating business? Why can't we be the kind of businesses where other people are like, oh, not only are they making money and hiring amazing people and doing incredible things, but they're really moral and ethical. Why can't we be the vanguards of a new kind of business? Like, I'm a huge capitalist. I'm a free market economist. Like, this is where my economic view of the world lies. When people say capitalism is a problem, no, it's not. It's the people who run businesses that are a problem. Businesses are not entities that exist in and of themselves. They're run by people. So if there's more people, hopefully like us, who are saying, I want to be making a lot of money, not going to deny that, but I want to do it in a way that also is a good way of operating, where I give everyone a chance, where we're diverse and we have diverse opinions, we take different ideas in, and we only do well if other people are doing well. Why can't that become the norm? Why does it have to be screwing people over as the norm?
UK has a great history of enlightened industrialists like Cadbury's, Rowntree's, these Quaker-led businesses that basically built whole towns to live, to house their workers. And I think, I've always thought that business can be a net benefit to every stakeholder.
100%.
Whereas it seems to be sometimes it's like, how can I extract as much from my
100%.
side? But I think within what we do, especially within what I do, content, you can get away with that for a little bit of time. But over the long time, if you want to be Martin Lewis, you need to be a net positive. Otherwise, you're not going to survive 20, 30 years in the game. Because the people sniff you out.
Completely.
Like you said, the universities will be like, everyone's got a payday loan, so you're clearly doing a crap job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned that why the teachers are already overworked and they can't learn about investing and teach their students, but I
don't think we should expect them to do it. I'm sure they could. I don't think we should expect it.
Curriculums change at school, right? And why can't they just say, okay, if we teach all the kids in school, 13 common entrance for GCSE about investing, it's going to have a net benefit on the economy of the United Kingdom. And also the teachers will be like, oh, I've learned a bit more. I can do this with my pension, or I can do this with my investments. Why is that not just common sense? Because it's gonna. There's no negatives. It's benefiting the whole country.
Totally agree. Let's do it. I totally agree. Here, there's a couple of issues. So speaking about Martin Lewis was a big part of the drive towards the all-party parliamentary group on financial education. These names are never roll off the tongue.
I can't believe you did it pretty smoothly.
I know. In my head, I was like APPG. And they passed it, right, in Parliament, that there would be financial education in schools. Fantastic. That's great. They've done it. The average school does 1 hour a year.
Yeah.
Right? So that's great, but that's absolutely meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. I don't think, and it's a little bit controversial, and I say this in the fora that I get invited to about financial education in schools, I don't think it's a subject. I think when we're teaching maths, why teach about percentages? Why not just teach about interest rates?
That's because maths and English, I was about to say, compulsory. So why can't they just incorporate it into maths?
Be embedded into the curriculum.
Exactly.
Real life examples.
Yeah, rather than algebra, learn
Which
about...
means more. Yeah, which
something.
means a lot more, and it makes it real life, because what happens at the moment is you've got money over here and you've got your rest of your life over here, and that's just not how our world exists. So when you talk about history, most wars have to do with land and money. A lot of geography and a lot of policy decisions revolve around money, maths. So what happens is you have a generation of young people, particularly women, who say, I'm not good at maths, so I'm not good at money. And actually, those two things have very little to do with each other. Money is much more about psychology. So if we could embed it in the curriculum so that no matter what subject you were doing, there was an element of what we call financial literacy. Risk. Risk is a huge element of money. We never talk about it. It's got nothing to do with maths. So 100%. If we could do that, sign me up. I'd be the first person to sign up for that. I think the challenge that we have with teachers is that we've already got a literacy and numeracy crisis in this country. And so if I was a parent, there's an element of, can we please teach my kids how to read properly and understand how to do basic mathematics? So to circle back to what we were talking about before we started, I think that we need to review what a 21st century education system looks like. What does a good student need in order to survive in this crazy changing world? And we're not doing that right now. We're simply we're redoing what we were doing 10 years ago and 20 years ago. You know, the biggest changes in schools is we now have whiteboards instead of blackboards. Like, it's a running joke in EdTech. Like, that's simply not good enough. But we can't expect teachers to make the change.
We had whiteboards about 10 years ago in my school.
Yeah.
It's not like it's anything new. Yeah, we had them ages ago.
Or we're giving kids iPads. Like, that's great, but so what? Like, that's not whether... So in an ideal world, we'd press pause, we'd get the smartest educators in the room, we'd get some industry people in the room, and we'd figure out, what does a 21st century education system look like?
We had that opportunity during lockdown.
Yes, we did.
But we didn't really take it.
No, we didn't. Same with healthcare. It was a perfect opportunity to reimagine these things, but we didn't. And it's such a wasted opportunity.
I mean, we can't even reform tax in the budget. So,
Yes. You know what? Back to what you were saying, enlightened enterprise, this is part of how you make change. It's part of how you make change. So I'm sure you guys as well, we train on the job. We employ a lot of young people. Like, the majority of my team is under 35. You know, we do training, we help people. You know, I nag people to death about getting their ISA done with their permission. They tell me they want to be nagged, and then I nag them until it's done. But, you know, that's not scalable on a national level, and not everyone's going to have an employer, you know, like us, and not all employers think that this stuff is important. And then it becomes the haves and have-nots. And what tends to happen when I sit in these, you know, at the House of Commons, you get invited to these round tables, and everyone's talking about these grand scheme ideas. Okay, but actually, you know, we've got 300,000 students on our platform out of a 1.2 million possible. Like, you know, you can rely to a certain degree on simply being creative and innovative, and then that has scale because people like us build for scale and we think about what scale looks like. But change never happens because government decides to do something.
They don't even...
you have a quarter of students on your platform?
We have 300,000 students in our platform, 1.2 million a year. That's over the last 3 years. So it's 10% of students. Yeah.
There's nothing in business as important as trust. To be honest, my whole business is about trust. And that's why, if you're running a business, proving trust through your security programs like GDPR is as important as it gets. Vanta helps centralize program requirements and automate evidence collection for frameworks like SOC 2, ISO 27001 and more. So you save time and money and build customer trust. Plus with Vanta, you get continuous visibility into the state of your controls. Join more than 8,000 global companies like Flow Health, Synthesia and Alaka Bank, who trust Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. This is the new way to handle risk, governance and compliance. And you can get $1,000 off Vanta when you visit vanta.com/makingmoney. There's a link in the description for you.
They don't even understand what young people want. I get it all the time. I meet policymakers and they're like, yeah, but kids just love short clips. And I'm like, you're speaking to a guy who's got a podcast that's 2 hours and like people will watch. I made a video on the budget and it did 250,000 views in 24 hours.
That's amazing.
Don't tell me that people just want
100%.
clips.
100%.
Like, people want detail. They want people to explain to them. They're smarter than you think. And the policymakers haven't even caught up with that. No. They're just like, oh, ticky-tocky, you know.
The TikTok.
Yeah. Vine.
well, you and I was just listening to a Joe Rogan episode on the way here, and like Joe's episodes are 3 hours long, and he's talking deep policy.
Yeah, and you do it.
So, but they don't understand, and worse than they don't understand that they don't understand.
That's why I bang my head against the table because it's like you don't even know how people want to consume the information. The FCA will be like, influencers are bad. They should read a press release. No one's reading your goddamn press release. Do you know what I mean? Go to where the audience is. Don't force them to go on your like weird 100%, website.
100%. Oh, if it was up to me, so much of this would be different. I agree. Yeah. I can't disagree with anything you've said.
So one thing I want to look at then, because we talk about education, we've focused on free education, but your realm is in paid for education, as in your students, as in post like graduate and
students don't pay. Universities pay.
No, I mean you operate in a world where people are paying for their education.
Oh, correct.
So we're not talking about the free, because we've focused on the free school curriculum there, as in juniors and high school. But your business targets university, college. Yeah. Yes. So what do you think about the cost of education? You've said like education is important in terms of financial outcomes. How do you see that system?
I mean, this is probably one of the most controversial things in the country that only people like us are talking about, right? Yesterday, government announced that they're increasing the fees, the tuition fees, maintenance, which is actually what students are concerned about. So for anybody who doesn't know, our system is split into two. You get a loan where half of that loan goes to the university that you're studying at in order to pay for your education, and you get what's known as a maintenance loan to pay for your rent and your food and all the rest of it. And yesterday, government made an announcement that the full-time fees in England are going up by £280 a year, which arguably is very little. And maintenance is going up by 3%, which arguably is very little because inflation is running higher than that. So actually... So that's, and that's the only policy discussion that there is at all about higher education in this country, which brings in tens of billions of pounds in international students, in enterprise, in startups, and all the rest of it. Do I believe that education should be free? I don't know. I really don't. I think that education should be a manageable expense, but there is a reality on the ground. The one is that we make education completely free, in which case you have to look at how many people are going to university. And a lot of, older folks who went to university pre-fees are like, when I went to uni, there were no fees. That's true, but 15% of students went to university. Today, it's over 50, post Tony Blair's whole thing. So first of all, we've got 50% of students who are going to university. That costs money, buildings and electricity and teachers and research and all of the rest of it. So you can make it free and you reduce the number of people, which inevitably means elite students going who've got parents who've got money, or you charge for it and you've got a more diverse range and higher social mobility opportunity. Social mobility for students who go to university is dramatically higher for lower socioeconomic students. So if you come from a lower socioeconomic background and you go to university, your social mobility skyrockets. If you're a middle-class kid who goes to university, your social mobility goes up a tiny bit.
That's what happened to me. I come from inner city Birmingham.
Right.
Went to Durham and it completely changed my
Great
life.
school. Yeah.
No, because you met me.
Yeah.
That
and
was
then
how
I
his life
employed him.
changed.
That's how
And then I gave him a job.
That's how his whole life changed.
Yeah, no, but
that's exactly it. Yeah.
More than it just opened my eyes. I was like, oh, okay, people have money.
Yeah.
Like, I thought guy around the corner with his dad had a beat up Mercedes. I thought they had money.
Then you come to London and go, whoa,
Yeah.
100%. And it's networks. And I'm
exactly.
forever saying to students, the network that you build at university will, in many times in your life, be more valuable than the piece of paper. Piece of paper is great. It gets you through the front door. After that, it's all about your network. And I've got a mentor who's worth about £800 million. Probably owns a beat up Mercedes. Mm-hmm. And he said to me a few years ago, we were talking about networking and how important it was and how much easier it is today than what it used to be. And he reckons he can draw a direct line between £500 million that he's got and the fact that he went to Harvard Business School. Not because he went to Harvard Business School, but because when an opportunity comes up in his class at HBR, that HBS, Harvard Business Review has been on the mind, that whoever that person is will first call all of the schoolmates. So it's just money attracts money. Mm-hmm. So building up the network while you're at university is absolutely crucial. Are we really going to make it only rich kids and kids who come from more privileged backgrounds being able to go to university? Like, what happens to all the other kids? So, but can you make it completely free? You can, but then where does the money come from? And let's also, as a final point, remember that the fact that fees are wiped out for 50% of students today means that we're paying for that as taxpayers, right? So on the one hand, the future economy is all about the knowledge economy. On the other hand, it's hard to argue that some courses at university contribute to that knowledge economy in meaningful ways that the taxpayer might be satisfied with. So as always, you've got to take from one to give to the other. You just got to decide who you're taking from and who you're giving to.
A lot of people don't understand the loan system and actually that it's quite progressive. And really,
Yes.
if you have a bad outcome from uni, you won't even pay back
Correct.
what you borrowed. It's the people who have good jobs who pay the most. They're the people where they go, okay, your education's cost you over 100 grand, but you've now earned a load of money.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And so we're always telling universities, and this has been a shift in their narrative, don't talk about the £45,000 average. Talk about the 20 quid a month. Mm-hmm. Because if you are graduating into a Golden Circle law firm at the moment and you come from a good university, you can start on 150 grand. That 22-year-old who's now sitting on 150 grand is not begrudging spending £200 a month
The
for
amount
paying
of
back
debt
their
you
student
have is
loan.
irrelevant. It's the amount you
Completely
pay back a month
Correct.
over the time period
Correct.
and your lifetime earning potential, really.
100%.
But if you go and it's bad and you end up on 25 grand a year, you won't even clear what you borrow.
Well, bad, or you go into one of the caring professions like nurses and teachers who we simply do not pay enough, in which case, and I've made this point in these meetings, stop charging them fees. They're not paying that fee back anyway.
Yeah.
So if you want to get more nurses, which we know that we need, and if you want more good quality teachers, which we know that we need, scrap the student fees for them because it's actually a tokenistic thing because they're never paying it back anyway. Increase the fees on students like me who studied economics, for whom that piece of paper made a significant difference in graduate potential, and don't even talk about the fees. Use the mechanisms of the tax system, use the levers to get the outcomes that you want. Instead, you're saying, oh, nurses have a £500,000 debt by the time they graduate. Well, yeah, but they never touch. So it's just a rubbish narrative.
Yeah, and you could, like you say, you can incentivize the behaviours you want. So if we need 1 year, we need doctors. It's like, well, it's free for doctors this year, and you'll get a big flood of people go that way.
Exactly. Use the tax system. I know it's really geeky, but like we've got so many levers in order to create the society that we want, but instead we don't use them. So as you said, like 1 year we want a lot of doctors. So this year we're going to double the maintenance for doctors, and we're going to halve the student loan. And then, as you said, you're going to get this massive ramp up. So it's just not. We're applying blanket rules to everything. The people who need to worry about their student loan is anyone earning over £65,000. If you're earning over 65 grand, you're going to pay the whole thing back. You're going to pay back 3 times more than you borrowed. That's for sure. If you spend your life on 40 grand, you're going to pay, 20, 30, £100 a month. I'm not saying it's not money, but it's hardly catastrophic money for anyone on a decent salary.
It's a graduate tax, right?
100%.
And what you need to do is, the question is, should I even go to uni? I think, we did like finance. I did a finance degree at Durham. Do I need to go? I worked in sales after that. I probably could have just got into sales.
100%.
You sat next to a guy, the best guy in the room, never went to uni. He dropped out of school at 15. He just knows how to sell. And I learned more off him in 10 minutes, And the network, amazing. But, we were also paying 3.5 grand, not 9.5, and
makes a difference.
So I think for me, that's the conversation.
I
Don't
agree.
worry about the debt. Go, should I go to uni?
Agreed.
Could I get a grad scheme or
Yeah.
an apprenticeship and get into work that way?
Yeah,
And if you make
agreed.
the decision, just forget about the amount.
Yeah. And also don't be so scared of making the decision. And this is the other thing that I'd want to say to anybody. Everybody seems to be under this impression you've got to get everything right off the bat. And the truth is, I started in sales. I studied marketing, couldn't get a job in marketing, got to final round, couldn't get a job, ended up in sales where I was getting paid nothing except that I was great at sales, so made a fortune, went into the not-for-profit world, got headhunted into banking, and now I'm doing this. So I've had like 5 professions.
Yeah.
You're not going to get everything right. You don't want to get everything right. Try, do, there's nothing's permanent.
The biggest change in the finance space in the last couple of years has probably been interest rates. We're now in this new era, having been at historically low rates for over a decade. The downside is we've seen mortgage rates increase, but the upside is we've seen savings rates increase as well. The funny thing is, though, a lot of people, particularly business owners, have been slow to jump on this increase in rates. Are you getting a good interest rate on the cash that's sat in your business bank account? I wasn't until recently. This is why I'm happy that we're partnering with Tide. They offer an instant access saver account where new customers can get 4.07% AER variable on unlimited deposits until at least the 31st of March 2025. If you're interested in putting the money in your business account to work, head to tide.co/savings. There's a link in the description for you. For the full offer T's and C's and Tide's terms, visit tide.co/terms. Variable rates are correct as of the 7th of November 2024.
Like my network from Durham is amazing, Matt Damo and stuff.
Obviously.
But like the MBA network is like
How many of them are paying you to sit?
Yeah,
sat in a kitchen? The MBA network's amazing, is it?
Damo's got a sensitive ego. Look, you're the most important person I met in uni. How about we start with that?
Obviously. Goes without saying.
I thought you would already know that, buddy.
Sheesh.
But geez, some people got to stroke that ego. But with my MBA class, we've got like a WhatsApp group with all of us, 130 of us, and like they're all over the world. And anyone who's like, oh, does anyone know anyone in JP Morgan? I'm applying for a job. Yeah, sure. I used to work there, or I work there, or my dad works there, or my friend works there. I'll put in a good word. So it's like the connections they can give you in ways you don't think about, and the job opportunities and like the exposure and different like being, because it's a global MBA, you've got people. I go to America, I've got like 4 people, classmates there, so it's kind of the access it gives you to other parts of your life.
Cannot disagree with that. Somebody asked me recently, what does social capital mean? And I was like, how many people do you need to call to get what you need? That for me is what social capital is. And you guys are too young to remember 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
No, I know what that is.
Okay, phew. I'm feeling like an old lady. And since Marvel came out, that whole thing has been screwed because of the ensemble. But anyway, how many people do you need to speak with if you need to get somebody at JPM, right? Yeah. And the bigger your network is, I always say to students, think of yourself as a spider. And like the bigger the web is that is around you, and they don't all have to be amazing connections, but you jump onto LinkedIn and you can drop somebody a message because they're connected to somebody. And actually, people are quite generous with their time and they're quite generous with their connections if you're authentic. If you're trying to BS people, as you were saying, people see right through that today. But networking today compared to 50 years ago, your dad had to work at JPM. Otherwise, you were not getting through that door. And he had to play golf with the chairman, right? Today, I say to students, pick the kind of job that you want, find 100 people doing that job, drop them each a message on LinkedIn and just go, hey, your career is super interesting. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? I really want to pick your brain. Ego is amazing. And of the 100, 40 people will say yes. All 40 will then pay for the damn coffee. But this is how you build a network, and you've never been able to do it the way that you can today. You just never have. Because
even
LinkedIn
just liking a post. Like
100%.
in the past, it would be you'd have to go through your little flick book of numbers and call people. And you basically had to pick your 8 people and be like, hope that they did well.
Yeah.
Now you could just wish happy birthday with one click of a button.
100%.
And someone would be like, oh, you
job.
say happy birthday to me every year. I'll give you a minute.
100%. And I just think we just need, people are just people. My first ever boss in sales, I'm sure you had a similar experience. When I was like terrified of picking up the phone, he was like, can I swear? Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
He said to me, don't be scared of anyone. Everyone gets up in the morning and does a shit. And I was like, it was the best advice I've ever gotten in my entire life. I was like 21 years old. It was the best advice ever. People are just people. Yeah. People are just people. Everything that you want is at the end of a phone call, an SMS, a LinkedIn, a tweet, whatever it is. But the network is, the sooner you can build that web, the bigger that web gets.
And the confidence to tap into it and ask.
100%.
Because I think that's a completely different skill set.
Agreed.
You know, like that, like confidence to say, I need this or I want this, will you give it me?
Absolutely.
And like the answer is typically yes. But
absolutely. Think about the most embarrassing, horrific, vile thing that's ever happened to you. It turns into an anecdote years later. Like, things are only scary at the time. I called off my wedding.
Still waiting before I can whip mine out as an anecdote.
So I called off my wedding 12 hours before I was due to get married.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It's a wild story. But it was the most horrific thing in the world. Today, I literally start presentations about fear with this, because what's terrifying for you at the time, later on, you're like, well, I survived that. I can certainly drop someone a LinkedIn message.
That is true. I lost $8,000 in crypto, and I
there
kept it like a secret for like, even my fiance doesn't know, like she knows now, but like I kept it a secret for like 2 years. And one day on the podcast, like it just came out and I was like, oh, it's actually, I can look back on it and like kind of smile now. But at the time I was like, I'm an idiot. You've ruined your life. What is wrong with you? Why did you listen to this guy? But then like time heals always. You look back and like, okay, it was a learning lesson, and like you can take. But I think the best part about uni, apart from the network, is just the time to be yourself and like discover yourself. Not have stress of kids. Well, some people do, but like kids, work, like mortgage, all the, like just be free, make mistakes,
100%.
Learn who you are, develop as a person, make mistakes, like get some skills, you know, get more confident in yourself and be like, okay, I like this, I don't like this. Find out what floats your boat and what doesn't.
Try things, meet people, talk to different people, talk to people that disagree with you.
Meet people from different countries. Exactly. Like you might grown up in Birmingham or somewhere, and then you meet
different countries.
Yeah, meet somebody from Leeds.
Then you meet someone
why
from
we don't
Japan.
like people from London? Grew up in a different country.
No, and then you meet someone from Japan. You meet someone from Japan, but you're from Birmingham. Birmingham's like a different world.
I love Londoners. Sorry, I just don't like this guy.
Oh, that class must have been fun with you guys.
Did you know your ex that you stood up at the altar?
Oh no, we're not. This is it was all very peculiar, but it's a great story today.
I'd like to think that like somewhere he's giving a presentation going, I was stood up on the altar. I mean, like it's
wasn't stood up. He wasn't stood up, but it was. It's amazing how many things in our life are like deeply, deeply traumatic and deeply, deeply terrifying. And any decision that you make, I truly believe any decision that you make within 24 hours, 7 days, 1 month, 1 year, you realize was absolutely the best decision you ever made. I was made redundant. It was horrific at the time. Within 2 months, I was like, actually, this is brilliant. That's why I started my business. Like, you just, if you chalk up everything that happens to you as a learning opportunity, as a way to become who you're meant to become, nothing is scary. Like my dad always says, if you're not dead and you haven't killed anyone, everything's reversible. And I honestly believe that. Yeah, my dad's full of like these little things that he drops in. But it's true. Like, so you lose money, right? Today you look back, 8 grand's a lot of money. But today you know that that's not catastrophic money. Whereas when you're 15, you know, it would be.
We interviewed someone the other day, former editor of the FT, and he wrote a book on Masayoshi Son, who's lost 250 billion over his career. It's like, if this man can lose $250 billion, you can take a little bit of risk. A little bit of risk.
My 8 grand's not looking too bad right now.
He's still going as well.
And he's worth like 35 billion now. So
what's 250 million?
I always think, like, anytime I'm thinking, oh God, like this is going to cost 10 grand, I'd be like, what would Masa do?
Yeah.
You know?
Carry on.
Yeah.
Keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's the only trick.
Yeah.
We always laugh that, in my family, we always laugh that you can win just by being the last guy standing. You know, you see those Olympic races where like everybody falls and there's just like the idiot at the back who was the slowest runner ends up crossing the line first. You literally just have to keep going. Everything in life is an endurance battle. It just is. That's just the reality.
Keep jumping the hurdles.
Yeah, just keep going. What's the worst? You'll meet amazing people. You'll do incredible things. You'll try new stuff. You'll fail loads. If you're doing life right, you're failing loads. You're just getting it right more often. That honestly, I just don't think this stuff is that difficult. Surround yourself with great people. Ask a lot of questions. Be humble. Be humble. Assume you know nothing. It's much safer.
Yeah, I definitely don't know much. So,
I was waiting for you to jump in.
Yeah, I was this close. You got there first. Wow, we're nice and humble over here.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
On the university point,
Sure.
then, do you think that all courses should be the same price?
I mean, logic would dictate that it makes no sense that happens, right? But unless it's legislated, quote unquote, in some way, everyone's going to take the maximum they can. But we know that to train a doctor is going to cost a very different amount than to train somebody who is an anthropologist or a geographer.
I'm an anthropologist.
Did I know that? No, I don't think I did know that.
You didn't,
a geography student.
Ask him why he picked anthropology.
Why did you pick anthropology?
Oh, don't do me like that. Well, honest answer.
Grenades.
Honest answer. I want to do sociology. My dad's like, sorry for anyone who does sociology. My dad's like, that's not serious enough. You need to do a more serious degree. Do anthropology. Or do something else. So I looked around at anthropology.
This is not the reason.
And it was like 95% women on the course. So
that's a good enough reason.
It was a great. I was networking away.
He's
all about his network.
Yeah, he's playing the odds.
It was great.
I respect that. I respect that.
I liked it.
You know what? As long as you know what you're trying to achieve out of it, why not?
Yeah.
Go where you got to go. But it's probably a cheaper degree than medicine in terms of executing on it. So if you could, it would make sense.
But if you do, then you medicine becomes elite, right? If you say that medicine is 200, then people won't do it.
Absolutely.
You know.
And that's why there's never a simple answer, because every lever has, there's a downstream impact of everything. I like what we were talking about earlier, which is about using the levers in order to shift the dynamic of graduates.
Yeah, you could say, okay, we've had enough doctors now, so it becomes more expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever.
Or you massively skyrocket the price of the degrees that you think are less valuable to society, and you drop the ones that are more valuable to society. So you charge a lot more on, I don't want to get in trouble with anybody, but you charge a lot less on doctors than you would charge on something like maybe fine arts. If anybody wants to yell at me, like they can. So I think we just need to be open to having the tough conversations, even just as an intellectual exercise. What does a 21st century education system look like? Like, let's just have the discussion, Let's
and then
just
how
say,
far are we from that?
Yeah.
And then common sense should dictate, okay, this is what it should look like and this is where we are all the way back here.
Right.
Maybe we should try and bring them closer together.
Right. And how do we get there? And how much money are we willing to spend? And where are we willing to make? So I just would love us as a society to just be talking more about the difficult things. And we just don't, because everyone's scared of saying the wrong thing and upsetting people. And we shouldn't be upsetting people deliberately. But if we disagree, we're naturally going to get upset. So let's have some debate.
Yeah. Yeah, we get upset about things anyway.
Exactly.
Things that don't,
Might as well be
things
useful.
that don't matter.
Well, apparently about not being loved and stuff.
not being my favourite university networking friend.
I thought we established that I was. Are you saying that might not be the case?
No, you're
Is
the
that what
creme
you
de
said?
la creme. Don't worry, Dave. You're still up there. You're still number one.
I think we need some community notes permanently attached.
Get on a post-it.
You put it in writing,
Sign here. DocuSign on its way.
bringing this back to students then,
Sure.
because I love talking high level, but I think we want to make it quite like actionable.
Yeah, let's do it.
Or just for young people. What do you think some of the worst kind of myths about money that you see these people believe?
That you can't do anything until you've got some. I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of foundation work that you can do in terms of, like I said, the £2, open the bank account. Like the hardest thing about saving is opening the ISA. Not because opening an ISA is hard, but there's always something better to do. Think about the last holiday. I'm always saying this to students. Think about the last holiday you took and how much time you spent planning the perfect hotel, the perfect outfits, the perfect flight, who you're going with, right? You two looking at each other because you spent on a big holiday.
I outsourced it all to Damo. He
See,
booked
smart,
it all. Yeah,
smart.
I know, right?
But when people do that about money, not so good. But like, how much time do you spend thinking about holidays? But then with money, you don't think about it at all. So you think about the huge purchases, right? But you don't think about it sounds really cliched, but you don't think about the £3 cup of coffee and the £2 magazine, the £5 pint, and the, a couple of takeaways in the week. That stuff it actually really does add up. So you can do a lot before you have a lot of money. I would say to students to focus on what's right in front of them and not worry about the future so much. When you're studying, you don't need to worry about your pension. You don't need to worry about credit scoring. There's plenty of time for that stuff. Life is a really long game. So like set yourself up really well at the beginning and then worry about it later. So those would be my tips to students. Think about your money. You can only spend it once. But the second you graduate, start saving, start investing, put your pension away. Like the sooner you can do that, the better, because time is your best friend when you're young.
You say that you tell them not to worry too much about the future, but do you find that they are worried about the future?
Yeah. The students today are worrying about everything in a way that we didn't worry about at all. We assumed we'd get a job afterwards. Mm-hmm. We were also willing to take any job that came. I mean, I started on $1,000 a month. Like that was my salary, which even by today's standards is pretty crap. We knew we'd get a job. We were willing to work really hard, and we were willing to, if my boss said anything, my answer was, yeah, of course, bring it on. Mm-hmm. Today, it's not so much. You want days off and there's mental health days, and that's not in my job description. Yeah. It's a very different way of looking at the world. I think that they're right to be concerned about certain things, but I also think they're very easily resolved, these problems. Work hard. Assume that you have no power at the start of your career. You're there to learn. That's your job.
Yeah, I always had that attitude.
Yeah.
I was just there borrowed time almost. Yeah. Just got to prove why you're there.
Yeah, and learn everything you can, right? Yeah.
This is the problem with university from my perspective, was it gave me too much confidence in my own ability, and then I entered the real workforce and they were just like, nothing, mate. Absolutely nothing. Like, shut up. Yeah. Literally, it was like a humble slap.
Absolutely.
Because, you come from uni and you're like, I can drink 10 pints of beer and be okay.
Durham, I tell you.
Yeah, I row. I know how to row and be over to Sheba. Like, this is what it was like.
You're in the workplace and you're like, what do I do?
Yeah.
But smart people are like, this is my time to really prove myself. And when you, like you were saying, like you've got no responsibilities, you've got minimal responsibilities, you've got all the time in the world. When I was in banking, I was doing 14-hour days. You would not hear me complain. If my boss needed anything, I was the first one to volunteer. And, you can say, well, what about your mental health? What about your social life? That was not what I was worried about. I was worried about how quickly can I get on the property ladder? How quickly can I get an investment portfolio in? And then once all of that was done, then it was like, okay, now what? Not that my investment portfolio is so big, but like financially, I was then more stable. I could start the business and all of that. And I don't feel like that's the attitude now. I feel it's very much like you are lucky to get me. And it's like, actually, like if you left, I could replace you in 2 weeks, like relax. So it's, I just think there's a little bit of humility that's needed. And I think universities, and I say this publicly at university conferences, I think we're infantilizing students. I think we're treating them like children in a lot of ways. And that's not setting them up for success beyond. Oh, yeah.
I think so.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. 80% of students on campus say that they have a mental health issue. 80%. There is an element of we have to protect students. We have to look after students. Now, some of that is right. But there is an element of, well, yeah, dude, you got the Monday blues. We all get that. Yeah. Like, get over it. You don't have anxiety. You don't have social issues. You just don't want to get out of bed. Like we've all, because you had a heavy night last night. Like, we've all been there. So I think, again, I just don't think we're setting them up for success. The real world is not like that. We should be teaching students to be anti-fragile. I don't know if you're familiar with Taleb's book about this, but the idea that if you take a hit, not only do you not break, but that hit makes you stronger going forward, which I think certainly from the conversation we've been having, I would imagine both of you lean into as a concept, right? Like, bring it on. Yeah. Like, I can take that. And the idea that something happens and you need 2 days off to recover and process, it's...
You see all these like reels, like videos, and it's like 90s babies, they like hit their arm on the door, they just keep walking. Then you see like 2000 babies, they hit their door like, ow, that hurt. Then you see like nowadays, then they like brush their shoulder, they're like, mama, they're like rolling on the floor crying. And I'm like, you see this more and more, but do you think it's actually, people are getting softer? Like it's not just our generation saying, oh, everyone now, all the
every generation says it. I think the only generation who can say it were the ones that were in the war. They can say everyone after us was soft.
Yeah. And I think there's an element of that that's true. But how many people do we see when you flick through, reels and TikTok and Instagram and the like, and it's people who've set up their camera and then they're crying into the camera.
That is so
And you're like,
frustrating.
oh my God, you're so cringe.
Yeah.
Like, what
they're
are
in their car
doing?
and they're like, record, he dumped me. And you're like,
oh my
you
God.
literally are going live while you're crying. So you had to set up the camera and then cry.
So embarrassing.
And things we would never even
so
think of. And I would
embarrassing.
never want to be on camera crying. And
I just think
especially intentionally.
We need to be really careful of generalising a whole demographic as like these few clips that we see.
100%.
I'm just not sure that like I bet there's 18-year-olds out there now that are ready to get it.
Oh my God,
and they're not they're not all thinking I need a mental health day or whatever.
And I've got a bunch of members of my team who are in their early 20s who are far more sorted in their lives than I was. Far more sorted. I've got a member of staff. She's I think she's 22, 23. She's bought her own apartment with her fiance. So sorted. I was never that sorted at that age. The problem is people do generalize. That is a reality. So, we're making a bit of a joke about it, but I would like to think the majority of my team are not like that.
My family always said you just got to work harder than everyone else.
And then you can change. You can change things, right?
I just meant you just sucked on the teat of Damien, mate. Get me going pretty well.
I mean, that is not an image I needed, but thanks.
He has it.
That was traumatic.
We got a calendar. You honestly.
We got a calendar.
Now I'm gonna cry into my phone. Oh my God! Check, please. You guys are so scary. I love it though. I think you're broadening your economic horizons by going into calendars. I think that's fantastic. I really admire that.
Making money, diversifying. Let's go.
Diversification is very important.
I bet the calendar game's been hit a lot in recent years, to be fair, through technology.
Yeah. Although the fireman's
Cliff
still doing
Richard's
it.
just like, done it.
How is that your default go-to?
No, he's big in the calendar game, is he not?
I'm a fireman girl, so I don't know what to tell you with that.
Fair enough.
That was not a great image in my head. That was traumatic.
Can we let's talk about your business a little bit then. So what was the leap from wealth manager into the space that you've gone, and then why did you target the student market?
Yeah, so I don't like it when people go, I'm passionate about. I think it's like really, I'm obsessed with financial literacy. So passion is like way back in the station. So when my mum was 11, her dad was reading her a bedtime story and had a massive heart attack and died in front of her while he was reading her a bedtime story. And the reason that's relevant is he hadn't signed life insurance papers. And this is 1950 South Africa. And my grandmother obviously had never worked because women didn't work. And financially, the family went from being, pretty solidly upper middle class to being in financial distress. And my mum, at 16, started to work and became an accountant by going to school. You want to talk about discrimination? My mum was one of 6 women out of a class of 850 men back in the day. Yeah. Today, women outnumber men in accounting.
Not an anthropology class.
Not an anthropology class. No, this was like need money, need to pay the family bills. And so my mum she herself became very obsessed with the idea that money is power to have choice. And since then, of course, we hear a lot about, people who stay in abusive relationships because of money and things like that. So that was really ingrained in her. And she, as I described, really ingrained it together with my dad's full support, ingrained financial literacy into us as kids. And so I've spent my whole life with friends going, how do I invest? What does this mean? What does that mean? But there was no business to be made. So I actually started my first business when I was 6. But went into economics and went into sales and then when I was made redundant from the bank, I was like, let's give this thing a go. I got a payout. I was like, let's give this thing a go. And when it fails, I'll go back to Australia and go back to banking. That was the theory. And I called a bunch of universities and said, your students are terrible with money. I can teach them. I mean, you can see my personality, right? So I'm a decent presenter. And these kids loved it. And I was going in speaking to 200 students about debt. I mean, rock and roll stuff. But they loved it. And the universities kept paying. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I pulled my back out on the train back from Aberystwyth, which took me like an hour to figure out how to spell it and pronounce it. And I pulled my back out. And at the time I had an offer from JP Morgan, so it's funny that came up, to go back into wealth management because there were no women. So you could write your own ticket. And I was like, do I go back into banking or do I give this thing a go? And I said to the universities, if I build a tech solution, I knew nothing. I still know very little. If I build a tech solution, will you pay for it? And 3 of them said yes. And I said, can you pay now? And I'll deliver in September, which I didn't know you're not supposed to do. And they said yes. So I called an agency. They built the most embarrassingly terrible platform you've ever seen in your life. But it was the best thing in the market. And that was nearly 7 years ago. So fast forward, and we deal with universities who make us compulsory for their students or voluntary for their students. So we've got a learning platform. We cover 85 different topics. We've built out a bunch of tools. The year before last, the end of 22, I bought a company in the middle of a seed round. That was a hell of an experience. In the US, the scholarship market, corporate scholarships, is worth about $8 billion. In this country, it was worth £1 million. So it's a huge job of work to be done with that. So bought a company, started to build that out, and then we launched our app a few months ago. So it's been a very fast evolving business, but nobody thought we could do this. Nobody thought we could do this.
Even you?
No. 6 months. I was giving it 6 months. I'm going back to Australia. There was no way. This was a scrappy idea. Universities don't buy stuff. The sales cycles are crazy long. Students don't want to engage with learning about money. It's really boring and
struggling to get to lectures, let alone go to extra learning.
Exactly. But it turns out we were the right product at exactly the right moment. Students are less likely to need emergency funding. They're less likely to need mental health support towards the end of their loan drop. We work with Amazon, with Nationwide, providing corporate scholarships, tens of thousands of pounds worth of corporate scholarships. So it's been an amazing ride, but I never thought we'd get this far.
That's amazing.
I could have used this in uni. It's a bit late now.
So one day,
we didn't have any, I had credit cards coming through my door, and I'm like, okay, cool. That's what I had. I had nothing.
So students don't use credit cards anymore. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And only 34% of students use their overdraft.
Wow.
I started my overdraft when I got to uni. They're like, oh, here's a Barclays student account with a $2,000 overdraft. I'm like, sure, have some of that.
I had 2.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I opened them both within 10 minutes of each other.
Okay.
This is my boy.
He's a hustler. He's a hustler. He can
I
swallow.
hustled. I had to pay them back. It wasn't exactly like a clever hustle.
But you got them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so students don't use overdrafts. We get a lot of calls from students who've blown through their overdraft going, why hasn't it reset? It's like, okay, let's explain let's explain to you how overdraft.
Come on.
That's awesome.
But this is exactly the thing.
so
We laugh
good.
about
I
it,
keep
right?
refreshing
And they
it.
don't. They're like, but where's my $2 grand? I'm supposed to have $2,000. It's like, but you've spent it all. But this is the problem: is they don't know, they don't understand. So they use buy now, pay later. That's the default credit facility that students are using.
Kind of stuff. Ooh.
Love a bit
instead of
Klarna.
credit cards, because credit cards are not time bound. So because it's not forcing you to pay it back within a particular time, they're very uncomfortable with credit cards, which is really a complete shift in behavior.
But I mean, when I worked in debt services, the buy now, pay later was predatory. It was like Bright House and things like this, and
The Christmas ones.
Yeah, the catalogs. You had
Yeah.
Littlewoods, and then you had these shops where you could go in and it'd be like, oh, I was so for a fridge, a TV, and it'd be like, oh, it's £5 a week, and before you know it, you got 100 quid a week, but it's over 5 years, and if you look at the APR, it's like a payday loan,
it's
and if you
wild.
don't pay it, they take the stuff.
Yeah.
So we would get it all the time where I would say to people, we can get rid of all of your debt apart from that, because if I wipe that debt through insolvency, they're going to clear out your house, and they'll take your fridge, they'll take your TV, they'll take the kids' bed, everything.
People don't understand that.
Yeah, the weekly payment stuff. So when I see Klarna and they're like, we've revolutionised payments, I'm like, you're just using an old business model there.
Absolutely.
We basically shook it out of the UK because it was so predatory.
Yeah. So Klarna is a little bit better if you use it as it's meant to be used.
Because it's interest free.
Because it's interest free.
Yes.
But if you miss a payment
That's
or
when
you're
they hit
late,
you.
then they get
this
you.
is credit.
100%.
Credit cards are amazing for the 90% of
100%.
people who pay them off, but the other 10% pay for everyone else to have it for free.
Absolutely.
There's someone out there that's getting rinsed by it,
And this is why we said, right at the beginning when I said, look at how if a business is super successful, what do they have to do to get there? And for a company like Klarna, and they're very similar to everybody else, the best way for them to make a lot of money is for people to get heavily into late fees. So it's a misalignment.
Yeah.
But credit cards are fantastic. I mean, I've got a credit card that's kind of bouncing. I bounce it every 18 months onto another 0%. Just because my money goes into, business and whatever. And people don't even know that 0% cards exist.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a good credit score. So if you don't have a good credit, so again, as long as you don't need the money, there's plenty of money out there for you. It's when you need the money that you can't get your hands on any of it.
Being a student and getting a credit card is the worst time
The
you get it,
worst.
because you don't have
Absolutely.
a regular stable income and you don't really understand all the
Absolutely.
connotations. And I was out in Israel taking stuff out the cash machine with my card, and it's just like, you don't really think, oh, this is going to cost me way more than just taking it out with my debit card. So
Absolutely.
it's better to
with a 25% 5% APR.
Yeah.
100%.
I also want to say, don't take out 2 student overdrafts in 10 minutes.
You're not down with that idea anymore.
Damo's like, Damo's tips.
I've realigned my efforts. Like
Great safety tip.
You know, like I put the hustle into like, because I was like, so it takes a couple hours to log on the system. So if I just hit both banks at the same time, they're not going to know that I've got another one.
I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud to know you.
This is the guy I met. This is the guy I met. I was like, I like you.
And then I took one of them. I went into a bar and bought everyone in the bar a drink and blew one.
They would have loved you.
Yeah.
This is why we became friends. We met in the club.
It's the free bar.
Yeah,
it's the
we
free
met in the
drink.
club.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
but this is the
reckless.
thing today with these students as well, is you can make a lot more money than you ever used to, right? Gig economy is huge. We're about to do a piece of learning about drop shipping, which is huge with students. You can be doing consulting work. You can do freelance work. You get onto Fiverr and up. Like there's a lot of ways to make money that we didn't have.
We had none of that.
None of that.
I was at one point we were trying to import saffron to sell saffron. That was as good as it got.
Very random.
Because we were just like, what can we move? That's like low wage. We were doing Shilajit as well post uni.
That's
but no,
hilarious.
that when I was at uni, me and my mate were like, we painted golf balls. And we were like, why are golf balls white? Why don't we like make them so they're like dead colourful? Like stupid.
Did anybody go for that though?
No, I mean we didn't go much past that, and then we just resorted to the standard student thing of arranging nights out. So we were just like, promote it.
Right.
Like we'd make, because we were at Durham
Love
and we just organised a trip to Newcastle.
But it's great if it does what it needs to do.
But that's what you had to do. You had
to
to provide like a physical service or good. Whereas now it's like you say, you can
Do it all online.
you can do it all on your laptop.
Yeah. And all universities now have enterprise hubs where you can start a business while you're on campus. They've got advice for you. There's money usually available, not huge amounts, but enough to get started. Uni is such a huge experience if you use it well. You can really squeeze the gut. I always say to students, do everything that's free. Get everything that's free. Get all of the support. Go to every single session. Go to every single speaker. Join every society that doesn't cost you money and then select the ones that do cost you money. University should be the greatest time of your life in terms of discovering who you are and making your friends and trying new things and all of that. It's a great experience.
Yeah, I didn't get
Watch
the most
money.
out of the services at all.
But you met him, so you're good. Yeah.
You had a good time.
Yeah,
You had a very good time.
And you had saffron, so quite frankly, I don't know what else you're asking
Literally mad about saffron.
for. It's the most random, although we were talking calendars before, I'm not sure it is the most random thing to say.
Yeah. Well, I also was in one of them at uni, the rowing calendar. I was naked in the rowing calendar.
Oh my God. There's naked, there's saffron, this podcast has everything.
Watching content like this can be super valuable, but sometimes you just need a little bit of help getting started. So we've put together a 6-part email newsletter series that will guide you through the process of getting up and running and getting your finances in order.
Hold your hand throughout the whole process.
So sweaty.
Link in the description.
Yeah, your palms are well sweaty. Why are you so nervous?
Knees weak, arms are heavy.